Hi everyone, how you all doing? Welcome back to the channel. Wednesday at the end of August, just 5 days left of this absolute nightmare, as far as I'm concerned, of a transfer window. It has been absolutely exhausting. I feel like I'm living and breathing it, sleeping it. I think I've had a few dreams the last few nights about Alexander Isak. I'm sure you guys have as well. And it's just consumed me for the last 6 or 8 weeks. I really need a break. Counting down the days now. Anyway, before I get on to today's news update, talk you through some situations, how I see this panning out. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. It's been great this window to get the subscribers up. Leave your comments below as ever. And I will get a chance to reply to them once we get the next few days out the way, or maybe try and have a look at some of those tonight if I can as well. So anyway, into the video. Firstly, the news last night we brought you that Newcastle had a second offer for Strand Larson, turned down by Wolves. We told you on Monday they'd had an offer of 50 million, straight up flat 50 million, no add-ons, rejected by Wolves. Last night's offer was 55 million, rejected by Wolves. We're expecting Newcastle today, Wednesday, what are we just now, 5:30. We're expecting Newcastle to go in with a third offer. If they haven't done so yet, I'd expect that to be tonight, maybe into early tomorrow morning, round about the £60 million mark. And I think that would probably give Wolves a decision to make. Now, the message and the word coming out from Wolves is that the player is not for sale. They don't have enough time to bring in a replacement. However, we are hearing from sources that they are sort of furiously behind the scenes looking into options to try and get a striker in. So I think they are probably trying to get in a replacement, like Newcastle are trying to get in a replacement for Alexander Isak, like Brentford are trying to get in a replacement for Johan Wissa. But getting those replacements in when the pond is so small, as Eddie Howe said way back at the start of the window at the end of last season, getting replacements in, strikers right now when they're so low on the ground, so difficult to find, is proven a difficult thing for all clubs. So that is why I think this whole domino effect that we might see will go right down until the deadline. I know I was saying a couple of weeks ago that the Isak deal wasn't a deal I expected to go through on deadline day or the last couple of days, but the way things have transpired and how difficult it's been for Newcastle to bring in replacements for Isak, this might go right down to the wire before we get a definitive on the situation. So 2 bids in for Strand Larson from Newcastle to Wolves. The second of those, 55 million pounds, turned down by Wolves. My information I'm hearing is that the player is really keen on a move here. Would love the opportunity to play at St James's Park. He's played at the stadium before. I think he might have scored last season, did he? Can't remember. I think he did. And he would love he loves the idea of the project. He thinks he'd love to work under Eddie Howe, etc. But he's not going to do an Alexander Isak or a Johan Wissa and agitate for a move and try to make things difficult for Wolves, which I think shows a lot about his character as a person, how he is a team player, and exactly why Wolves want to keep him, and exactly why Newcastle United want to sign him. So look, he looks like a good character, sounds like a good character, he scores goals. Is he worth £60 million? Probably not. I don't think many of these transfers are at the moment. The market has just gone absolutely mental. And to think that if Newcastle do get Strand Larson and Wissa over the line, and look, I still do think you're trying for both of those, and I still see a scenario where you sign both those players between now and Monday. A combined fee, I reckon, for Strand Larson and Wissa would be 3 figures. I honestly think it would be round about £100 million, 95, 100 million. Huge amount of money for 2 players who, well, certainly in the shape of Wissa, who's just got that 1 year left on his contract plus the year's option. But 2 strikers who, yeah, they scored goals in the Premier League last season, but they're not household names. But it just shows how crazy the market's got at the moment. With regards to Wissa, I don't think there'll be an issue with regards to agreeing a fee there. I think the issue still remains that Brentford are trying to bring in a replacement, and until they do so, Wissa's not going to be freed up to sign for Newcastle. And I think that's a frustration for the player as much as anything else for Newcastle, because had you managed to get Wissa in the door, it just gives you the security that you've got one player there, and then it gives you a bit more freedom to go and work on Strand Larson or another striker or whoever it may be. The one to probably watch out for between now and the end of the window is Nicholas Jackson at Chelsea. Look, I don't think in any way he was high up Newcastle's wish list, but he might be a player that could be available on loan with an option come the end of the transfer window. And I think it's one to watch, because if it comes to the situation where, you know, you've only got a day or two left, you've not managed to bring a striker in, Wolves are digging in, Brentford's digging in, Jackson's available, it might be one that Newcastle have to turn to. So look, Eddie Howe said it on Monday in his press conference after the Liverpool game. He said the list we're looking at now is not the list it's far from the list we were looking at the start of the transfer window or back in April or May. But look, you have to adapt, you have to be ready, and you just need to make sure that you've got players. Look, this is going to be a long, hard, grueling season. You cannot go into this with only Will Asula and Anthony Gordon up front. It would just be impossible. Obviously, a huge question mark surrounds Alexander Isak. The information I've got is that the meeting on Monday didn't go too well. There certainly wasn't a positive resolution that came out of that, and that means that there still is a chance, I would say a fairly high chance as we stand here on Wednesday night, that Alexander Isak could leave for Liverpool. Look, it would be a lot more palatable for Newcastle if they managed to get bare minimum one player in. If you get two in, if you got Wissa and Strand Larson, I firmly believe that Isak will be allowed to go, because I know Eddie Howe doesn't need three centre forwards and Anthony Gordon. He likes having Anthony Gordon as his number three. He obviously plays out wide primarily, but he likes having him as a number three striker. He doesn't need three. So that's why, you know, I think a lot of you are looking at this and thinking, is it Wissa or Strand Larson? That's not how I read the situation. I read the situation as Newcastle are trying for both. If they can land one of them, then great. If they can land two, then even better. And then that opens the door for Liverpool to come in and try and take Isak to Anfield. So it feels like the whole situation is just waiting on one domino falling. And I think once one falls, we'll see a real movement in the window. And each hour and each day ticks by, it becomes more and more pressing. But it's one of these things where I think it could all happen pretty quickly, and we could have a crazy couple of days, whether that's tomorrow, Thursday, whether it's Friday, whether it's a weekend, I don't know. I could do without having a wedding on Sunday, the day before transfer deadline day. That's going to be a bit interesting. But yeah, so that's how the situation is right now. Look, I know there's a lot of people out there thinking or worried about not having a striker. Look, I do think you'll sign someone. I think you might have to pay over the odds, or you will have to pay over the odds. I mean, the fact we're talking 60 million for Strand Larson, 40 million for Wissa, it's exorbitant prices. You probably at the start of the window, you're talking half that amount. I think Forrest bid, was it 23 for Wissa back in January, and he had longer left in his contract. Strand Larson just signed permanently from Celta Vigo to Wolves in the summer for 23 million. So like, it's a more than double profit in the space of just a few weeks, a month. So, but that's how crazy the window's got. That's how desperate Newcastle are at the moment. How much, and it feels like, look, you're going to get your eyeballs taken out to sign these players. It's going to be, the prices are exorbitant, eye-watering figures. I mean, even if you were to get Strand Larson, you might even have to break your club transfer record. Isak was 58 plus 5, 63. We're talking an offer of about 60. You might actually have to break your transfer record to sign a guy who wasn't even on your list at the start of the summer. It's incredible the way things have happened. But yeah, that's where we are. Regards to Isak, will he go, will he stay? Look, all options are still on the table. Anyone who says right now they know exactly what's going to happen is lying, they're guessing. I still, if you're asking me, I still think that he's more likely to go. Just there's so much water under the bridge. There's been attempts to mend things. There's been no resolution from that. I think Eddie Howe would love to keep him. I just think there's a feeling from within certain people at the club that it's difficult to come back from what's happened. But of course, Newcastle aren't going to go cap in hand to Liverpool and say, well, we want you to sign our player. It doesn't work like that. Liverpool need to come to the table and need to make a big bid. How much is that going to be? I've been saying for weeks, I wouldn't expect it to be the 150. I think it'd be a little bit less than that, but it still needs to be significantly more than the 110 that was offered whenever it was, earlier on in the window last month. So look, that's where we are just now. By the time you watch this video, a third offer could have gone in for Strand Larson. It might have been accepted, it might have been rejected. I just think Wolves, they've got George Mendes working for them at the club at the moment, the super agent. He's got fingers in lots of pies. He knows so many different players and agents and people involved in football. I think he'll be able to bring someone in at Wolves in a replacement for Strand Larson. And I think if they were to be offered 60 million, I think it's a huge amount of money to turn down for a player that they just signed for 23 in the summer. So look, what I'm saying is be patient. I know that's difficult for me to say when it's gone on this long, but I do think you're going to get there. I still see a scenario where Strand Larson and Wissa sign and Isak moves on, which I think would be a clean break for everyone, but also a lot of things need to fall into place to get to that stage, and we are running out of days, aren't we? Alright guys, looking forward to the Champions League draw tomorrow. If I've got any more updates on the situation, I will bring it to you tomorrow. I would expect busy tomorrow, busy Friday into the weekend. It's going to be pretty hectic these next few days, so keep watching and thank you for watching. Cheers now, bye bye.